Hi guys, welcome to my C++ series for beginners. This is going to be the first class where we're going to talk about the history, the syntax, outputting data to the terminal, and comments in C++. This is just going to be the introductory part of C++. We're going to look at an advanced class much later, but for this series, we're only going to look at the basic, the fundamentals of C++. So let's get straight into it. For the main item we have today, we're going to look at the history first of all. So C++ is a popular programming language. You can use it to build computer games, and almost every game development you see today has some snippets of C++ in them. C++ is the cross-platform that can be used to create high programming applications. Okay, so C++ was developed by Bjorn Strostrup as an extension of C. So C is just basically procedural programming. It has no ability to do OOP. So C++ was an extension of C to give you OOP features in programming. So C++ gives programmers a high level of control over system resources and memory. The language was updated 4 major times. We had an update in 2011, 2014, 2017, and 2020. So the current versions we have of C++ are C++11, C++14, C++17, and C++20. So we have talked about the brief history. So why do we need to use Python? Why do we need to use C++? Sorry, I got carried away there. So C++ is one of the most popular programming languages, like I said before. C++ can be found in a lot of operating systems today. We have Darwin, we have Linux, we have Windows, we have Ubuntu distribution. Almost all of them use C++ in their OS. C++ is also used for graphical user interface for most GUIs you see today and in embedded systems. C++ is object-oriented programming as opposed to C, so which gives a clear structure to programs and allows codes to be reused, and it reduces development costs. One good part to know about C++. C++ is portable and can be used to develop applications that can be adapted in multiple platforms. It's fun to learn. C++ is close to C, C Sharp, and Java. So when you learn C++, you don't really need to go back to learning the basics of C, C Sharp, and Java, because it's almost the same constructs they use. It's almost the same syntax. It just different declarations and terminologies that are being used, but the basic structure is the same thing with other programming language like Java and C Sharp. Now let's look at the differences between C and C++. So the main difference is that it's an extension of C++, an extension of C. So you just know that where the limits of C stops, C++ enhances those limits, like OOP, like I said before. So they have the same syntax, C++ and C. The only difference is that C++ supports classes objects while C does not. So just take that to note that this is the main difference between C++ and C. So let's get started into it. I'm going to give you guys this basic syntax of C++. So I'm going to be using VS Code for this tutorial. I would encourage you guys to use the same. So if you have VS Code installed, you could just simply go to the extension market. But if you don't have it installed, you can visit the website for VS Code. It's an open source software. It allows you to program different languages. You also have a lot of IDEs that you can use for C++. You have the code block. You have a whole lot of IDEs. But I would encourage you to use one IDE so you don't have your systems jam packed with a lot of IDEs when you are trying to program subsequently. So VS Code is like a universal IDE. When I say IDE, I mean integrated development environment. So you just have to install a bunch of extensions for the language you want to work on. So you can work on that language. You can be able to debug and compile on VS Code without having to switch between Windows and all that stuff. So for you, you can just come to the extension here. On my option, it's hidden, so I click on these three buttons. I see the extension. Then once you get to the extension, you just need to search here. I already have it installed. C slash C++. I don't have internet connection for now, but when you search that up, you can see the extension to be installed. In my own case, I already have it. You see in my installed section here, C and C++. So once you have that installed, it gives this IDE the power to understand your language you are writing and for it to be better suited for coding C++. Okay, so let's go straight to the code. I have a basic syntax of C++ here on my code. Now, the extension for saving a C++ program is .cpp. Like you can see here, I have firstcode.cpp. That is the extension for saving C++ files. Don't get it confused with what you're seeing on my screen now. This is a basic Hello World application. This is what you learn for every time you want to learn a programming language, how to just print Hello World or print some text to the console. So in my case, I am doing it for C++ for this tutorial, for this series. So now let's try and explain what these couple of lines do, so that you don't have to like cram everything. You just need to understand what they do and understand how to use them. That's how programming works. You don't need to cram, you need to understand. So let's start with explaining each line. On line 1 here, line 1 is simply a header file. Okay, it lets us work with input and output objects. Like we're working with an output object here, which is the cout. So we can use that to add more functionalities to our C++ code. Now let's look at line 2. Line 2 uses it allows us to use namespace for our objects, and it's a standard library. So don't get these first two lines confused. You basically see yourself using these two libraries for every code you are going to be developing in C++. It's not something that it's going to be what you need to cram to understand. Just know that these two libraries allows us to use input and output objects and allows us to use the standard library for C++. So we're going to skip line 3. That's an empty line. On line 4 is just the function that is going to be called upon when we run our code, which is the main function. So a function is a block of reusable code. That's the basic definition of a function. We can use a function to run the same code repeatedly if we want to have that scenario in our code. So in this case, we're just using the function to run the hello world basically. So most of your code is going to be in the same format, int main. The main thing that's going to be different is the body of your code. So line 4 is just basically the function definition of your code. Line 5 is the cout. Now observe, this is an object that is used together with this lesser than sign. We use double of it to print out to the console. Cout. That's how it's pronounced. Cout, as far as C, then out. Then this is the context we want to print to the terminal. Hello world. Okay, so this is the cout operator, and this is the cout keyword. And how it works is we just use the cout, then we use the lesser than sign, then the text we want to print out to the console. So that is the explanation of line 5. Then for the line 6, basically ends the main function. So when you return 0, it closes the function and ends the program. That's why we have the return statement used to just end the function there. Then line 7 is an empty space. Line 8 is to close the function. Other programming languages don't really have the open and close curly braces like Python, for instance. But for C++, whenever you define the function, you must open and close it. So whatever is inside your function from 5 to 6 is your body, is what your function will execute when it's being called. Okay, so now let's run this to the console and see how it works. To run this, first of all, we need to build it. That run and build it here. I run this key here, which is the run and debug action. When I run that, I have some code being run in my console. Now I want to see the result of this. I will just come down to my console here and run it like that. So if you see, skip all this asterisk here, what I primarily want to print to the terminal is the hello world. As you can see here, we have the hello world here. So that's how it works. Now I want to also add more printout statements to this. Let's say I want to print out something else. Let's say cout. Then we use the lesser great sign. Let's say hello HND1, for instance. Hello HND1. I want to print this to the console as well. Now observe, I'm having a red line here. Okay, that's because after writing a line of code, you must use the semicolon action to end that line. Some programming languages don't require you to use that, but for C++, you must use that. If not, you're going to have an error. So now I'm going to build it again because I've added some new content to my code. I'll build it again and I run it to the console. So when I run it to the console, I would see hello world, hello HND1. But if you observe, my code is all on the same line. It's not readable. It's not easy to spot out in the code. I would want them to print on different lines so that I can have clarity in my code. So to do that, it's one of two ways. We could use the end L keyword, or we could just use the front, that's forward slash and n, to print on a new line. So to do that, I will just put in the forward slash and n after my code here, the forward slash and n. 1 minute, forward slash and n to print on a new line. Okay, so when I save this, I should be having hello world on a new line, then hello hnd1 on its own line. So let's build that first. So now before you run your code, you need to build it, because you add new contents to your code. You just don't run your code over and over again. You first of all build it, then you run your code. That's why you see I build it first before I run my code. So when I run my code here, I would see hello world one line, then I have my hello hnd1 on a different line. Okay, so that's how basically you can print multiple statements to your terminal. So now I want to add a double line. It's still easy. I just add another character, then you see it takes time to run that through, then I build it again, then you see that I'm adding two spaces. So I just don't want them to be jam packed together. I want to have them on different lines. Then when I run it again, you can see that I have a space here after the hello world. This is how you can do it. So this is how you can print on the new line. Let's look at how to also add comments. Okay, let's look at how to add comments in our code. Now, what are comments? Let's say I want to document my code so that the next person reading my code can be able to understand what I'm saying on that line of code. Let's say, okay, this line of code is to just print hello world. I want the user to see that when he logs in. I can just use the forward slash, then I write this line is used, sorry, is used to print a text to the console. Let's just write some text there. Let's not specify. So you can see that the moment I start typing, my text is in gray. Okay, that's because this is a comment. Comment is a way of documenting your code or highlighting a piece of code not to run for a particular period of time if you want to see the result of it not running. So comment is a very powerful tool in Python, in C++. Sorry for that. I'm always saying Python. So it's a powerful way for you to document and make your code more readable and understandable for anybody just reading your code for the first time. So there's a single line comment and there's also multiple line comment. So this is just commenting on one line, but if my comment is very, very long, I have a bunch of text I want to comment out, and I just don't want it to affect my code, or I want to neatly comment this whole code out from my code, I can use the forward slash key and asterisk here. Then I come down here and end it with the same asterisk and forward slash. So now if you observe, now the whole code goes blank. This is a way of doing multiple line comments. The first method is a single line comment. The second method is a multiple line comment. So when I run my code, I should see nothing in my console. When I run my code again, I run my code to the console. You see it's empty here because I've commented all my code from the result. I don't want anything to be shown in the terminal because I want to just like fix a couple of things before I come back to my code. So I've been able to explain the syntax of C++ to you guys. I've also explained how to use a comment. I've explained how to print on different lines, and I've explained the different methods of printing on a new line in C++. In our next class, we're going to be looking at data types and taking input from the user. So how would you be able to assign variables to a variable? How will you be able to assign values to a variable, and how can you collect inputs from the user? So far in this tutorial, I've been able to just print out to the console, but that's not just it about programming. We need to be able to also take in inputs, assimilate the input, and take back and present output back to the user based on the input he gave to us. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next class. See you then. Cheers.